Welcome to Macon Memories. This is Lynda Wright at Randolph-Macon College. Today is February 17th, 2010. I'm here today with Roger Martin, the 14th president of Randolph-Macon College. President Martin, please tell us how you came to Randolph-Macon College as president.
Well, I was a college president before at Moravian College in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I had been there for 11 years. I have said and written publicly that college presidency should last about a decade, give or take a year. It was my 11th year. I was about 57 at that point in time. So I knew that I had either a second presidency or another part of my career ahead of me. And I loved being a college president so much that I announced to the Moravian College Board of Trustees that it was time for me to go and time for Moravian to have a new president, that I would be looking for other opportunities. It was very amicable. I've actually written about this transition. It was work for them, it worked for me. And I found Randolph-Macon College, which was perfectly suited for me. It was a liberal arts college, very similar to Moravian. And I especially liked it because it was a United Methodist college. I went to United Methodist College. I'm a United Methodist historian, and it was just perfect for me. And so things worked out, and I was hired in 1997 and was here for 9 years.
Thank you. Can you talk about the role of the president as you saw it when you came to Randolph-Macon, and what the immediate needs of the college were, and how that role evolved while you were here?
Well, Randolph-Macon had a succession of very strong presidencies. Liddell Payne just before me. It was a well-run institution. It had a strong board of trustees, and so it needed to have continuing strong leadership. And my hope was that I could provide that. The immediate needs of the college, I think, at that point in time, now this is 1997, was that it was in the beginnings of a capital campaign. It needed, I think, renewed energy in that campaign. It was something Liddell started. And I love fundraising, so it was something that I look forward to being involved in. There were a number of needs around campus, building the endowment at that time, several buildings that needed to be renovated. A number of faculty, when I was being interviewed here, mentioned to me that they felt that it was time to kind of review the general education part of the curriculum. And so these things I didn't make up. They were fairly apparent of what needed to be done, and I was happy to take on that challenge.
Thank you. You mentioned the historic campus and your work with restoring that. Can you describe how that evolved and the financing for that and any support or resistance to that project?
No, actually, part of it was my own background. My father was an architect, a preservation architect in New York City, and I was brought up as a child seeing that it was a big mistake taking down beautiful old buildings and putting up boxes to replace them. Here, the Brock Center had just been opened. Some people think that I was the person responsible for raising the money for that. It was Liddell who did that, and that's a beautiful facility, a new facility. And sort of in the back of people's minds was the fact that eventually the college needed a new science center, and I know that's something that's being discussed now. But clearly the building needs on campus were really renovation projects. So it was the combination of my real interest in renovation to begin with and the needs of the college, and they included Old Chapel, the Blackwell Auditorium, the what were called the motel dorms, Thomas Branch. These are beautiful old buildings, not so much the motel dorms. I think that some people would have argued that they should have been taken down, but really the opportunities for renovation were key at that point in time, and so that's how I really got into these renovation projects. How you finance the projects? It was part of the capital. Quickly became part of the capital campaign, and there really wasn't any faculty resistance. Staff saw that these are things that needed to be done. If anything, there were maybe arguments about whether the motel dorms should be taken down and new ones built, or whether they could be renovated, and we went the renovation route. But on things like Old Chapel, obviously that's a central building to the historic campus. Thomas Branch is a beautiful residence hall that when I came here was only the first floor was being used. The top floors were vacant. Blackwell Auditorium was a building that would lend itself to performing arts center, or at least part of one. And that was high on the agenda of things to taken care of. But there was really no resistance to any of these things.
Having come here since those renovations have happened, they seemed like they would have been obvious. I mean, they've been done beautifully. In your inaugural address, you said that in order to achieve greatness, Randolph-Macon must change. What were the most important changes you helped bring about during your tenure as you think back?
Well, I have mixed feelings about change. I mean, on the one hand, traditional liberal arts colleges like Randolph-Macon exist to preserve tradition, and so you don't want to have change rapidly happening every year, whatever happens to be current, trying to change the curriculum around something like that. On the other hand, I think that colleges that don't change run the risk of just sort of becoming mediocre. So I think change is good, and I've always been a person who appreciates change and sees change as necessary. And I think that again, one of the things that again articulated by the faculty, or many people in the faculty, was that this might be a good opportunity to take a look at the general education program in the curriculum. And it was an opportunity to put together a strategic planning process. And so we went through strategic planning, and yes, that the general education part of the program became something that was very important, as well as other items that, again, became part of that capital campaign we were involved in.
Just to follow up on the curriculum, can you talk about the process of adopting the new curriculum and the Peaks of Excellence program that evolved out of that?
Yeah, it was a strategic planning process that was very simple. I borrowed it almost wholesale from a process used by Connecticut College, and I've written about this in a number of publications. But the idea is to really come up with a limited number of goals and objectives that can be achieved to involve as much of the community, faculty and staff and trustees, as possible in the process, and then to get on with getting it done. And so one of the questions that I asked was, okay, what are the things that we do really well at this college historically, or that we have the potential of doing really well? And through a number of sessions, planning sessions, meetings with faculty and staff, discussions on the Board of Trustees, it was decided that I mean, Randolph-Macon had a robust, well, it was not doing as well, in my opinion at least, in international programs, but had the potential to doing that. And besides which, having an understanding of the world is very important to a liberally educated person. And so international programs became high on the list of what we wanted to have as a peak of excellence. Internships were already being done here, and it was felt that the internship initiatives ought to be more energy put into that. This is a marvelous way that students who are getting a liberal arts education could actually take that education and apply it to something in an internship, which would open up job possibilities. So that was a second peak of excellence. And then the program we had here in research, the SURF program, the Student Undergraduate Research Fellowships, had been already endowed with a fairly large endowment. We were probably at that time one of the top 2 or 3 colleges in the country doing undergraduate research. And so that became a peak of excellence. And then we added to that because we were at that point looking at the general education program. We wanted to try to create a general education program that was different from what maybe other colleges that did, that could also become a peak of excellence. And I might mention that after we had done that, and this was really an idea that as much Rob Holyer, then the dean of the that embodied these peaks of excellence. And so the Thomas Branch Project became a thing where there would be residence halls on the top floors, but on the bottom would be a peak of excellence center where you'd actually have the international programs. You'd have at that time, the hope would be that you would house the person who was running the general education program. The internship program would be housed there. So the students could come to one place and they would have readily available to them all of these peaks of excellence. So that was kind of a neat thing we did as well.
Thank you. And can you talk a little bit about the first year experience as far as the interdisciplinary aspect of the new curriculum? And that might have been Dean Holyer's
This
input as
this was really, I think, as the faculty met around this, I think the feeling by many of us, certainly was my case, was that freshmen don't always see how the liberal arts and science disciplines are connected. And they asked the question, why do I have to take these, what were really distribution requirements? Why do I have to take these distribution requirements? And so we thought about that, and we came to the conclusion that maybe in the first year it would be an idea to create a program that would give students an opportunity to see how psychology was related to, say, biology. And so we came up with these opportunities for faculty from completely different departments to really teach together around a common subject. And we decided to create a lot of flexibility in that kind of program. What was a nice thing about that, it was also an opportunity for the faculty faculty from one discipline to really teach with faculty from another. Mm-hmm. So it was also a program that could become a learning experience for the faculty as well. And so really this kind of general education program was really kind of devised by the faculty itself with the help of Rob Holyer and many of my ideas. And I've always believed in team teaching and interdisciplinary teaching because of my own background as a historian, but also as a historian who also often brings in sociology into a lot of what I write about historically.
Thank you. Changing the subject a little bit on a more personal note, in 2000 you were diagnosed with melanoma. Can you describe how you were able to continue working during that time and the response of the college community?
Well, one of the only good things about that cancer was the fact that and it was very touching to me when I think about it, is in 2000 when I was sick and when I don't think people realize this, but before I went to Johns Hopkins for my treatments, I was told that I had a year to live. When melanoma, it was a skin cancer 2 years before on my earlobe that then went to my lungs. And when it goes internal like that, the chances of survival are not good. And I was told by my oncologist here when that happened, and the tumor was removed and came back again, that I only had a year to live. So it was a very difficult time for both myself and Susan. The faculty were absolutely, and staff were wonderful about that. They knew that it was a difficult time for me. They knew I had cancer. They knew I was being treated at Johns Hopkins. And it was like a second honeymoon, you know. They were just very gentle with me at faculty meetings, and they respected my privacy, all of these things. It was, I couldn't, when I was going through the treatments during the year, it was very difficult for me sometimes to function as a president. Rob, can we stop a second?
President Martin received a cell phone call at this point in the interview. When he returned, I resumed the interview by repeating the question concerning his experience with cancer. President Martin, you were diagnosed with melanoma in 2000. Describe how you were able to work during that time and the response of the college community.
That was actually a very difficult time in my life. I'd had melanoma on my skin cancer on my earlobe a couple of years before, and then it was surgically removed here in Richmond. And then it came back as a tumor on my left lung, and that was resected in 2000. And then it came back again at the end of the summer, and I was told that I had a year to live. But the college community response to that, faculty and staff were just marvelous. I mean, it was like a second honeymoon for me. It's the only good thing about the cancer. They really treated me very tenderly. They knew what I was going through. I don't think they maybe knew how serious it was, but they just protected our privacy. They were Susan, my privacy. They were great to me around campus, always expressing concern about me. The Board of Trustees was the same way, and it really made me really appreciate in ways I might not have of what a great group of people, a great community this is. They were just very kind. Then, of course, 2 years later, when when I had conquered the melanoma, it was back to the normal relationship between faculty and president, which even then was very good. But that was kind of a very difficult time in my life. And Elaine, my assistant, will remember I would kind of limp into the office after these week-long treatments at Johns Hopkins. I was being treated with interleukin-2, which is a very potent biochemical that just sapped me. I mean, I lost more hair than I've got now, and I was just trying hard to be a college president. And also, I was at that point debating whether I needed to resign. Right. But then I responded very well to interleukin-2 at Johns Hopkins. I was a complete responder, and I started getting better, and I was able to carry on with my presidency, although my physician at Johns Hopkins pointed out to me that it was really important for my immune system to be up and running because melanoma hibernates and it can come back again. And he questioned whether the pressures of a college president were the best thing considering what I had just gone through. And so in my 9th year, I decided that it was the best thing for me in the college. If I left, it was about a year earlier than I would have wanted to, but a capital campaign was in the offing, which Bob is going to do now. And so I thought the best thing for both me and the college would be for me to step aside. But that was a very, very difficult period for me in my life. And again, the community here was just fantastic.
Well, the fact that you continued on for many more years after that really speaks well of you. You could have easily have decided not to continue in difficult work under difficult circumstances.
Well, 2 years ago, my doctor at Johns Hopkins, he didn't tell me this right away, but when I was 8 years in remission, he told me that the people that went through that regimen at Johns Hopkins, only 10% survived. So 90% of the people who were being treated in that program never made it. And I don't understand why I was one of the 10% that was able to survive. Maybe it's genetics, maybe who knows. But I was very blessed, needless to say, that I was able to survive it.
Well, that's wonderful. You mentioned after a couple of years, the relationship with the faculty went back to normal. In his Macon Memories interview, President Liddell Payne described faculty meetings as sort of like the House of Commons. The president's there, the dean's there, and the faculty can ask anything they want. Can you say a little bit more about your relationship with the faculty during your time as president?
Yeah, I think that, there's always going to be, it's a natural thing, there's always going to be some tension between the president and the administration and the faculty. That's the nature of the beast. And anybody who becomes a college president thinks everything is going to be smooth and wonderful, doesn't really understand how higher education operates. I mean, we're not like corporations where the CEO tells everybody what to do, they salute, and they go and do it. We have a system of governance, which is shared governance, where the faculty play an enormously important role, especially in the area of curriculum change. I think Liddell's description of the faculty is an apt one, which is something that I appreciated too. It's an opportunity for the faculty to really ask hard questions of the president and of I think over the 9 years I was here, the case also at Moravian was actually very good. I mean, for one thing, I was like one of them. I was a scholar. I was a highly published Methodist British historian. I had a faculty appointment at Randolph-Macon, and so I was part of that group, although I was the president. And I mean, that does create kind of a difference between the administration and the faculty. But my relationship with the faculty, I think, was pretty good, and I think an evidence of that is the fact that a lot of things were accomplished in my time with relatively little grousing. I mean, the curriculum changes were very there's a lot of debate and argument that went on with that, as there should be, and it wasn't altogether easy. But I would say generally that I did not have major issues with the faculty, as some people might have.
Very good. Can you touched on this a bit when you were discussing your cancer, but can you talk about your relationship with the Board of Trustees and touch on the capital campaign that you were involved in?
The of all the institutions I've worked for, including Harvard, where I was a dean, I think that Randolph-Macon, in my opinion, had the strongest board I've ever worked with. Not that everybody was perfect. First of all, I had two great chairs. Bev Dalton hired me as the board chair, and then Macon Brock, who followed, and they're both really wonderful board chairs. And the most critical relationship, a very important relationship, obviously, is with the president and the board of trustees, but a very important one is between the president and the board chair. And in both of my institutions, I've been blessed with board chairs who I respected and who respected me, and where we had a good working relationship. But the board here was, when I came, we were sort of partway into a capital campaign, and they were all on board with it. I think when I came, Liddell started it. I gave it some renewed energy, and we're easily able to make our goals. But even after the campaign, I could say the bird songs, Macon Brock, all of these wonderful people who stepped up to the plate and gave generously to the college, really have made Randolph-Macon helped to make Randolph-Macon what it is today. I love fundraising. I love fundraising with board members. I mean, Macon Brock, besides being very generous himself, was one of the best fundraisers himself that I've ever worked with. I mean, he could walk into a meeting and say, "Look, I've given to the college. Won't you give to the college as well?" But I think it was a very strong board of trustees, very interesting board of trustees, and again, blessed with two really wonderful board chairs.
That's great. Can you talk a little bit about your sabbatical at St. John's College in 2004? What made you decide to relive a freshman year experience, and how did that affect you?
Well, normally the couple times I've had sabbaticals because I've been actively involved in it as a British historian. And in the past, my sabbaticals would be to go back to the United Kingdom and work the archives, which, as a penalty to me for going to Oxford, were located at Cambridge University. But I decided for my last sabbatical leave in 2004 to do this kind of zany project I got into. I'd become, as a college president, very interested in the first year experience, the freshman experience, in part because my own freshman year was so difficult, not because of the college I went to, and I write about this in my book, but because I was kind of an immature high school student, and I was very homesick when I went to college. But I've had a very special feeling for students for making that important transition from home to college, and I become really interested in that as a subject. But I think at a subliminal level, and I didn't really realize this until one of the things I did at St. John's is I went out for crew. I'm 61 years old, and I'm rowing with 7 high testosterone teenagers in this boat. And kind of when I was racing at the end of this, I'm wondering why I did this. I think that part of the St. John's thing was I was approaching retirement, which really scared me, the thought that I would no longer be actively involved as a leader. I was then 4 years into remission from my cancer. And I think probably subliminally going back to that I could compete as I did, which probably in retrospect I shouldn't have done, although I was in pretty good shape physically at that point in time. So it was a combination of an interest in freshmen, but also this need I had to kind of prove to myself that my life wasn't winding down and was going to be over. Mm-hmm. But it was a blast, and I really enjoyed writing the book, and it's done well. And now I'm writing another book, which is kind of a sequel to that, which is a more serious study of the freshman year, the transition from high school to freshman year. And one of the things I've really missed about Randolph-Macon are the students being on campus. And my bet is that Liddell and Luther White and the presidents who've been here, when they retire, would say, those who were not able, well, Luther became a college president again, but would say that what they miss is not being on a campus and around students. And that's certainly been the case for me. This book now is a great excuse, because I'm doing it on 5 college campuses, to get back to interview students, to be back on a college campus. And I mean, just coming back today and walking around here and seeing these young people around just is what it's all about for me. And I miss that very much.
Thank you. You mentioned that you are a Methodist historian.
Yes.
Can you talk about the college's relationship to the Methodist Church historically when you were president and where you see that headed?
Well, this was one of the reasons I really was interested when I was being interviewed to come here. I am not a Methodist myself, but I was, when I was at Oxford, I was in John Wesley's college, and I wrote my thesis in large part on the Methodist revival. And so here's this opportunity to become president of, I was looking for a liberal arts college, but not only that, it was one of the 2 original Methodist colleges in America, the other one being Wesleyan University, which is no longer, founded by the same people. You know, Stephen Olin, who was the first president here, became president of Wesleyan, their second president. So there's this relationship. Now, Wesleyan is no longer a Methodist college. John Wesley would be amazed at Wesleyan is a very different kind of institution. But this was still a Methodist college. So as a historian, a Methodist historian, that was one of the things that attracted me to Randolph-Macon. I've also always believed that denominational church-related colleges are very important, because even though we're really non-denominational in the sense, or non-sectarian in the sense that all sorts of students come here, it really does provide kind of a setting to be able to talk about important moral and ethical issues. Plus the fact, John Wesley, you know, the Methodist Church was founded at Oxford in a university environment, and I've written about this while I was a president here. Wesley was very interested in the educational enterprise. And so I thought it was just really kind of wonderful to land here. And I thought the Methodist connection, first of all, because of the history of this place, was very important. But I thought also to promote it was very, very valuable to the kind of place I wanted Randolph-Macon to be and become.
Thank you. Do you see those denominational ties in higher ed weakening overall, or just in certain institutions?
I don't know. I would have maybe thought that before. I think that maybe denominational colleges were waning, being replaced either by state universities or by non-sectarian institutions. But I really think that, well, I have a friend who thinks that, used to write for the New York Times, who thinks that denominational colleges are going to be the hot colleges, because they really can deal with issues that state institutions maybe cannot deal with. Again, coming back to the moral and ethical dimensions, and we've seen in this recession, the cause of the recession were kind of lapses in moral and ethical judgments. I think what we do here, again, this college does not push Methodism. Matter of fact, I think still the largest single group of students are Roman Catholics, which would have amazed Wesley, and I think he would have been very proud of. But I think that church relationship is very important, and I think there's a bright future for it looking into the years ahead.
Very good. During your presidency, that I understand that debate and the choral program had both lapsed a bit before you came. Can you talk about how those thrived when you were president?
Well, to be it's not that the choral program the debate program, if it existed, was not that visible. And of course, that's very much an important part of Randolph-Macon's history with the Washington Society. So that was that was really wonderful that we were able to bring debate back as a strong thing. Then to me, there was a good choral program here, but it needed, in my opinion, to be a much more central feature. But Buster Ward was the director of the music program and did a great job. But I felt, and I think Buster would have agreed with me, it needed to have a much bigger presence, and so we just put more energy into that. And it's really wonderful to see the choral program. I mean, Methodists are singers, and so both of those, debate and music, really fit the historic mission of Randolph-Macon College.
And they both are thriving here
Yes,
now.
that's wonderful to see that. I mean, it's colleges aren't just buildings and endowments; they're also, curriculum, but also extracurricular programs like that. And it's nice for me to see the choral program and the debate programs doing so well.
Well, any final thoughts or memories you'd like to share with Macon Memories today?
No, in my life, I've been blessed with having been a college president at two really great institutions. These are memories that I will always have. I was very happy at both institutions, and I'm just so fortunate to have landed here. We weren't sure when we came here, I'm a Yankee from the North, whether we would fit in to the South, but that was not a problem. Richmond is a very wonderful place to be near. Of course, you don't really break into Richmond society unless you're a 10th generation Richmonder. But people in the South here, many of them on the Board of Trustees, were very welcoming to us. And for me to have spent 9 years in the South was really also a wonderful experience. You know, my great uncle, who I can remember as a little boy, was in a Pennsylvania regiment in the Civil War, or as they say down here, the war between the states. And he was in the siege of Petersburg, and he wrote 13 letters home he was a teenager. Actually, he was illegally in the Army. He wrote 13 letters back to his parents in Reading, Pennsylvania, and I gave them to the Virginia Historical Society. And so I felt that through my great uncle, also a very special connection to the South. And I think overall, the experience of being here was just wonderful. And I love coming back to Virginia. Virginia is a wonderful place to live.
Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing your memories today, and just thank you for participating.
Thank you.